Welcome to the Climate Layer. I'm Alex Bernat. Today, I want us to think back to high school science class. Maybe we're 15, 16 years old. We're sitting in a classroom that smells like dry erase markers and whatever someone microwaved in the teacher's lounge. And our teacher is explaining gravity. Not gravity as a feeling, not gravity as a metaphor, gravity as a measurable, predictable, testable force, 9.8 meters per second squared. Every single time without exception. And we, the classroom, accepted that. We wrote it down. We probably memorized it for a test. Then maybe a few weeks later, the atom, this invisible structure that makes up everything we can see and touch, held together by forces we will never directly observe in our lifetime. We accepted that too. Photosynthesis and biology, the cell, the periodic table, plate tectonics, the fact that the sun is a star 93 million miles away, powered by nuclear fusion happening at its core at temperatures we cannot begin to fathom. We accepted all of it without much resistance, without a protest movement, without a congressional hearing. And I want to ask why. Not in a challenging way, in a genuinely curious way, because I think the answer to that question explains almost everything about where we are right now. Here's what I think is going on. When we learned about gravity in high school, it didn't ask anything of us. It didn't implicate our choices. It didn't look at our lives and say, the way we're living is part of the problem. Gravity just explained why our pencil fell off the desk. Neutral, informational, comfortable. The atom, same thing. Photosynthesis, same thing. These are facts about the world that sit alongside our lives, not inside them. They describe reality without challenging how we participate in it. So climate science is different. Climate science looks at how we get to work. It looks at what we eat, where it came from, how far it traveled. It looks at how our homes are heated, what our electric bills are powered by, what we buy and how it was made. And it says this is connected. What we do every day is part of a system, and that system is in trouble. That is a fundamentally different kind of knowledge. It doesn't just inform us, it implicates us. And for a lot of people, whether they would say it this way or not, that feels less like learning and more like being accused. There's a term for what happens in our brains when information threatens our sense of identity or our way of life. Psychologists call it identity protective cognition. When a fact conflicts with who we believe we are or with the community we belong to, we don't evaluate that fact neutrally. We push back. We look for reasons to dismiss it. We find the one study that says something different and we hold it up like a shield. And I want to be really clear, this isn't stupidity. This isn't a failure of intelligence. This is a feature of how human cognition works under threat. We are social animals. Our sense of identity is tied to our community. And when a piece of information says our community's way of life is part of the problem, that brain treats that like a threat to be defended against, not a truth to be accepted. Climate change is uniquely positioned to trigger that response, more than almost any other scientific issue in modern history. And that is not an accident. That is, in part, by design. Let me take us back further than high school, back to the 1950s. Cigarette companies knew their product caused cancer. Not suspected, knew. Their own internal research told them so. And faced with that reality, they made a decision. The goal was not to disprove the science. The goal was to create doubt about it. Fund alternative research. Manufacture the appearance of a debate that, among actual scientists, did not exist. They hired PR firms, They placed op-eds. They funded think tanks. They coached executives to go on television and say, with straight faces, that the science was not settled. They built a playbook, and that playbook would be used again almost verbatim decades later. The fossil fuel industry learned from it. In some cases, they hired the same people. In the 1980s, Exxon's own scientists produced internal research projecting the warming effects of carbon dioxide emissions with remarkable accuracy. The company sat on it, then spent hundreds of millions of dollars over the following decades funding organizations designed to cast doubt on the very conclusions their own researchers had reached. This is documented. This isn't a conspiracy theory. This is the historical record. What they understood and what made their strategy so effective is that we don't need to win the scientific argument. Science isn't decided by public opinion. What we need to do is make the public feel like the argument is still happening. Keep enough noise in the room that people throw up their hands and say, I don't know, the experts can't even agree. Confusion is the product, and confusion, it's cheap to manufacture. Now here is where things get harder. Because the industry playbook was bad enough on its own, but something shifted around 2022 and 2023 that changed the scale of the problem entirely. Generative AI. The cost of producing convincing misinformation collapsed almost overnight. What used to require a coordinated PR campaign, a budget, a team of writers, now takes a prompt and 30 seconds. Fake expert commentary, synthetic news articles, coordinated social media posts that look organic but aren't. AI-generated content that mimics the style and tone of credible sources well enough to fool a casual reader scrolling at 11 o'clock at night. And the platforms those posts live on aren't designed to surface the truth. They're designed to surface engagement. And the single most reliable driver of engagement across every platform we have data on is emotional arousal, specifically outrage and fear. A post that makes us angry travels farther than a post that informs us. A headline that triggers anxiety gets more clicks than one that explains nuance. This isn't a bug. It is, in the most cynical sense of the word, the product working as intended. So what we end up with is a system where the manufactured doubt of the 1980s now has an industrial scale amplification machine, where the cost of lying has dropped to nearly zero, and where the emotional vulnerability that makes climate science hard to accept in the first place is being actively exploited every day at scale. That is the war on science. Not a metaphor, not an exaggeration. A coordinated, well-funded, algorithmically turbocharged effort to keep us confused, angry, and paralyzed. Here's where I want to push back on two things I hear a lot. The first is just trust the scientists. And I believe in science. I believe in peer review and the scientific method and the extraordinary work being done by researchers around the world. But just trust the scientists has never been a sufficient communication strategy on its own. Trust isn't granted, it's built. And it's built through relationship, through consistency, through communicators who show up in our world and speak to our lives, not just our brains. The second thing I want to push back on is the idea that accepting climate science means drowning in guilt, because I hear that a lot too. People who feel like engaging with this issue means spending the rest of their lives feeling terrible about every decision they make. That's not what the science is asking of us. We did not design the fossil fuel economy. We did not lobby against public transit or block the clean energy transition. We are people living inside systems that were built for us before we were born. The goal of understanding climate science is not to feel guilty. The goal is to understand enough to demand better systems, support better policies, and stop letting the people who profit from confusion use our exhaustion against us. Research on what actually works in science communication points consistently in one direction. Lead with values before leading with data. Start with what we already care about: health, community, economic security, the future our kids will inherit, and build from there towards the science, not the other way around. Pre-bunking over debunking, getting ahead of the lie before it lands, works better than chasing it after the fact. Inoculation theory, the idea that if we warn people that manipulation is coming and show them what it looks like, they become more resistant to it. This is real. It works. It's one of the more hopeful things I've read in a long time. And storytelling, not as a sort of alternative to facts, but as the vehicle for them. Because we have never primarily processed the world through data. We process it through narrative. We have always done that. The communicators who are actually moving people right now are not the ones with the best slide decks. They're the ones with the best stories. So let me bring it back to that classroom. The Earth is round. Gravity is pulling us toward it right now because of the mass of this planet. The sun is shining because of nuclear fusion happening 150 million kilometers away. These are facts. We accept them. Well, most of us. We built our understanding of the world on top of them. And our species' collective behavior is destabilizing the climate systems that every living thing on this planet depends on. That last one belongs in the same sentence as the others. Not because it's comfortable, not because it's easy to sit with, but because it's true. And truth, even when it's hard, even when it asks something of us, is always the better starting point. There is a war on science and on intellectualism. It is being fought with money and algorithms and manufactured confusion. And the way we fight back is not with more outrage. It's with more clarity, more honesty, more willingness to meet people where they are and help them see that understanding what's happening is not the end of something. It's the beginning. That's what this show is about. That's why I'm here. And I'm glad that we're in it together. Thanks for listening to The Climate Layer. If this episode resonated with you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you have thoughts, if you have pushback, if you have questions, find me. I want to hear from you. Leave a comment, message me, whatever helps. So until next time, keep listening, keep looking for the truth, keep finding that hope, keep asking questions in search of that truth, and as always, keep peeling back the layers. I'm Alex Bernard, and this is The Climate.